Before board games, before even sports or TikTok or YouTube, we kept each other entertained by sharing stories. At first, we would literally tell stories to one another, and later, we did it through books. It's just in our DNA to want to sit down and collectively share stories with one another. Now, a couple years back, Ryan Laukat decided to take this idea, this inherent need to share story, and combine it with board games to create the epic Sleeping Gods. And you're here because you want to find out more about its sequel, Distant Skies. So we're going to do that. I'm going to go through 10 things you need to know if you're considering adding this game to your collection. So I'm Jake, you're watching Get This Game, and this is Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. At number 10, I'm very happy to report that Distant Skies is still very much giving Sleeping Gods. Now, this is certainly for people who have played the first game and want to know more about how the new one is different, but if you haven't played Sleeping Gods before and are just curious about it, don't worry because I'm really going to get into the full game system in general. But anyways, Sleeping Gods Distant Skies takes place in the same world as the first game. You still have the same core mechanic of moving around an open atlas, investigating different locations, reading from a storybook, and doing different checks along the way to try and survive them and hopefully gather up gear and what are called totems that will hopefully help bring you home at the end of the game. At number 2, the first big difference from the first game is that every turn feels good. Look, it was very common in the first Sleeping Gods for you to take a turn where you're just moving a couple spaces on the ship, or maybe going to the market and then moving to another space. Just the way the action selection system worked meant that a lot of the time you were taking a pretty boring turn, leaving all the fun adventuring and exploring to your friends. Well, with a complete overhaul in the action selection system of Distant Skies, this is no longer a concern. Now, you're always working with a certain number of increments of time, and different actions take a certain amount of time from your allotment. That means, at least when we played, each of us was pretty much always being able to explore somewhere on the board. It gave a lot more flexibility for you to map out your moves and just do more. Something that maybe the game lacked a little bit. So safe to say in this one, you're never gonna just move your spaces a couple times on the board, maybe visit a market and say, well, I guess I'll wait another 15-20 minutes when I can do that again. At number 3, Sleeping Gods Distant Skies replaces the ship in the first game with a plane that adds a lot more variety and difference, both mechanically and just thematically. It means that you don't have to be stuck in a ship, on a boat, on an open water, just visiting islands where you can. You're now able to travel on land and actually move with the ship to other parts of the world. Not only, again, is this really thematically pleasing to me, but it also solves a big mechanical problem that was present in the first game. You had to go into the first game knowing that you're really only going to have time over the course of a full campaign to be able to visit a couple squares in the big atlas. But with the plane, it introduces this whole idea of being able to teleport to different locations on the map, which is really, really helpful, and it really made us feel in our first playthrough that we saw almost all of the world at least a little bit, which was a lot more satisfying than just part of the map. Not only that, but in the plane, you only really have to worry about your fuel and the plane's health, as opposed to the first game where the ship maintenance and the damage that it was taking, a lot more fiddly, a lot more maintenance physically on the board. So this one gets rid of all of that, and we're big fans of the plane. I kind of alluded to number 4, but you really feel like you get to see more of the world that Ryan has created, even just through one playthrough of Distant Skies. Look, the reality of the first game was it was split up really into kind of 3 chapters, and in between those chapters, you would lose all of your skills and a lot of the items and just stuff you had been building up over the previous hour and a half. I really think Ryan learned from kind of modern video games in his redesign of Sleeping Gods and the way the flow of the game works. In a lot of video games, at the start, it's not uncommon for you to be this cool epic dude that loses all of his stuff, loses all of his skills, and then has to spend the game kind of working his way back up to make himself more powerful. Well, that's really what you get to do throughout the course of Distant Skies. You don't feel like you're, again, losing that momentum. You feel like you're always getting a little bit better, and you kind of feel pumped and empowered to be able to go out and fight those tougher enemies, go and explore those riskier looking locations, all in the sense of being able to have a pretty good game plan going into it and feeling ready to be able to take that on. This is a good time for me to mention the replayability of this game, and really any Sleeping Gods game, is nearly infinite. There are so many things to do and see, things you will go down a certain path on and have to double back on, go over here, find this keyword, go over here, go on this adventure next time. You're going to be playing this over and over and over. Again, a 10 to 15 hour game is nowhere close to the amount of content that exists in this box. On that note, at number 5, take a seat, because you're going to be here for a while. Look, this is a campaign game, and there are certain inherent bits and pieces of that you're going to have to be okay with if you're going to take this game on. The reality is that Ryan has set this up to be a 10 to 15, maybe even more hour campaign long. So you are going to have to find a dedicated group that is okay with sitting down and playing through it. What is kind of nice is people can jump in and out. You just trade up the characters and have everyone take on a certain number. But if you don't like that, a downside of any really campaign game in general is that it's going to take a long time, and it is going to require some level of commitment if you do want your party to kind of see it all the way through. At number 6, Distant Skies makes a huge improvement to the combat in this game. Look, in the old Sleeping Gods, combat was kind of that thing where you're like, this game is amazing, I love it so much, look at all the cool things it does. Oh, combat? Let's just kind of brush that under the rug quickly. But the combat system has almost been completely overhauled in this game. It is now card-based, which is a lot more fun. It's more streamlined and less fiddly. You're still going to be working with a grid on your enemy board that you kind of have to fill in the spaces for to defeat them. But really, on your turn, you are choosing a card to play and doing the outcome as a result. You're not trying to fiddle around with like, okay, I'm going to attack, then you attack. Oh, we got to flip these synergy tokens. Oh, yeah, what does my guy do? Oh, I'll give you this item. All of that is completely gone. What I also love here is that it's a lot less punishing to get into an early encounter because, a little bit of a spoiler here, you can completely run away from combat after a turn. Yeah, you're going to take a ton of damage, but you're not going to completely wipe out your entire party in one go just because you started your fresh game and just chose the wrong location early on. I'm missing a ton here in just about a minute of being able to explain it, but trust me, the combat here is a big improvement from the first game. Look, number 7 is going to be a quick one. The presentation gets a 10 out of 10 score for me. I do have the Kickstarter version, meaning I have some upgraded components, gold stamina trackers, some minis for all of the characters you play, even a little mini stopwatch or a pocket watch that you get to use. But even outside of that, everything about this production just enhances the entire experience. I usually don't like to comment on art. Art is extremely subjective, but trust me, it is gorgeous in my opinion, and if you are a fan of Ryan Laukat's art, you're going to find no shortage of it in here. And even the writing, I find, is super cute and really nice. It's definitely well edited all the way through. You're not really running into any typos, at least from what I've seen. And the humor is just enough to, keep you going along with this huge epic kind of adventure story that you can't wait to flip to the next page to. Now, with that said, at number 8, I think I prefer the characters in the first game as opposed to this one. Nothing to do with the actual balance of the characters. They're all basically the same, right? Each have a different set of skills. Some have strengths and weaknesses, and you level them up over time. But in terms of the story, I found there was a lot more character development and uniqueness with the characters in the first game than with this one. The ones in this one kind of felt a little bit one-dimensional, for lack of a better term. Maybe it's because there was only 5 of them, there just wasn't as much variety as the first one, but something to keep in mind with absolutely zero spoilers here. The number 9 thing you need to know about Sleeping Gods Distant Skies, and this is going to rub some people the wrong way, it's not about winning. Look, if you are someone that is going to be worried more about a lot of structure in your game, fierce competition in your games, you probably didn't click on this video in the first place. But you have to understand, this is certainly a case where the journey is the destination as opposed to you just trying to work towards something. Look, you have to kind of check your ego at the door and know that you're not ever going to see everything that you want to in this game in one go. You are not going to find nearly as many totems as you want or think you are going to find throughout the game. It really is about that adventure. It is about the exploration. It is about turning a page, turning a corner, and just seeing what happens and hoping for the best and enjoying yourself just from that experience. So if you're a winner, good for you. I'm a loser. I don't need to worry about winning in this game, and I'm fine with that. And at number 10, probably should have been number 1 because it's the point I wanted to most make, is this game is easier than the first one, and that's a really, really good thing. Look, when you have to worry less about just scraping by, trying to pull together enough resources to be able to keep all of your dudes alive, completely having to reset everything after a round and feeling like you're back to square one, when you eliminate all of that, you get to the core and to the essence of what Sleeping Gods is all about. It's what I've been talking about this entire time. Discovering this narrative tale through some board game mechanics. Discovering this world through a board game where you're doing a bit of resource management, you are doing some skill checks, you're doing a bit of combat. But more than anything, because the game just is a little bit easier to get by, a little bit easier to get through, collect stuff, and just stay alive, it means you get to fully appreciate and explore more of the world that Ryan Laukat has created. So for number 10, that's probably the thing that I appreciate most about this one. So if you've stuck around for this long, first off, you get an appearance from Finn, and you get to hear the Get This Game scale, what I rate this game out of 10. A few reminders, I rate based on gameplay and design, which gets rated a little bit higher because the gameplay and how the game plays is the most important part. Fun factor, which gets rated nice and even, my own personal experience and fun with the game, as well as presentation, which is rated a little bit lower. A game can still be great, but be ugly too. For gameplay and design, this gets a 9 out of 10 for me. Look, I know I've been making a lot of comparisons about the first game with this one, but the reality is I need to make those comparisons because everything that went into redesigning a lot of the mechanics of this game has made it for the better. Is the combat system perfect and as sophisticated as some other more fighty games? No, but Ryan was going for something a little bit different here, and I have to appreciate that, along with all the other changes and smoothness that brought this to the design. This gets a 9. Let's get presentation out of the way. We already said it's a 10 out of 10. We can move on. And for fun factor, I'm not ashamed to say that this gets a 9.5 out of 10 for me. Look, I think in the last 5 days, my fiance and I have played this game 4 out of 5 of those days. We love this world. We love the decisions that you get to make throughout. It's very reminiscent of a lot of tabletop role-playing games that I'm also a fan of. And look, I think the reality is that this is a game that if you are looking for direction and scope and focus, you're going to have to go find it in a different game. But I love that I can go out on this sandbox journey and just get to do whatever the heck I want. In addition to that, I have to call out again the replayability factor. There is so much game in this box to the point that in this old Sleeping Gods, I still haven't discovered and explored everything. So needless to say, I have a lot of backlog, but it's a good thing, all in the name of replayability. So after crunching the numbers, Sleeping Gods Distant Skies is going to get a 9.3 out of 10 for me. Let me know what you think. Do you like the old Sleeping Gods? Are you looking forward to some of the changes that the new one brings? Is this just not your jam? Are you more of a crunchy Euroer or just somebody that wants to fight baddies and bash them with some dice? I would love to hear more. As always, follow me on TikTok at GetThisGame or on Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at GetThisBoardGame. Give me a like, leave a comment, and hopefully we see you next time.